Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the People on the Go Lunch and Learn webinar. My name is Melissa Sweat, and I'll be moderating our webinar today. Today's webinar is Leadership Beyond Gender, Transform Limiting Mindsets to Become an Engaging Leader. And I have with me Valencia Ray, who I'll be introducing in just a moment. Just a quick background about why we have these sessions, especially for those who are with us for the first time. We have these sessions because our focus at People on the Go is productivity in the workplace, and the topics that you see on the screen are the topics that we cover. We have them in a variety of formats, including the webinar format, just like today's session. The webinars are offered on a monthly basis, and you can check them out on our website. We also have a membership program that makes these webinars very easy to take advantage of. Additionally, we have many resources available, like our Less is More blog, our Accomplishing More with Less groups on Facebook and LinkedIn, and you can also follow our founder, Pierre Khawand, on Twitter. And so now let's dive into today's topic. I'm going to introduce our speaker, Valencia Ray. Valencia Ray is a consultant and executive coach for organizations that want to help their executives perform at their very best. She is also a dynamic speaker and trainer who helps to restore vision by shining the light on core issues that get in people's way of achieving their true potential. By eliminating these blind spots, her clients become more focused on a daily basis, experience more confidence in themselves and their talents, build more momentum toward their dreams and goals, and feel more passion for their work, career, and life. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and transfer over to Valencia, who will be presenting today. And then after, we'll have an interview with Valencia.
Okay, thank you. Melissa?
Thank you, Valencia. I'm going to go ahead and transfer that now over to you.
Okay. And let me just get this going here, just make sure that, okay, how's that?
Wonderful, thank you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Melissa, for that introduction. I've been so looking forward to this webinar today. So welcome, everyone. With the limited time we have today, I would like to break our session into two parts. The first would be a brief 15 to 20-minute presentation to lay a framework for the Q&A discussion that will follow for the remaining 15 minutes or so of this webinar. Okay, so the webinar today is Leadership Beyond Gender, Transcend Limiting Mindsets to Become a More Engaging Leader. The key point that I want to make is that mindset, which gives rise to attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors, is at the root of performance. By performance, I mean not just what you do, but also how you show up on the stage of life, both personally and professionally. So think of mindset as where your mind is set, like a thermostat. When we set a thermostat to a particular setting, even when the environmental temperature shifts, the thermostat will seek to return the climate back to where it was originally set. There is not any real flexibility, it's fixed. In our workplace, we need to develop mental agility when the environment changes and adaptability if we want to be innovative, confident, and make good decisions in new situations so that we can perform at our very best. So unlike the thermostat, we need to develop mental agility. So I want to share a little bit about myself. How do I know that what I talk about can really work in real life? Before selling my medical practice, I was an eye surgeon for many years. In this role, I had to have formal training in neuroscience because I had to be able to diagnose life-threatening illness of the brain and nervous system every day I went to the office. So on a personal note, starting at a very young age, I became very interested in personal and human potential. So I used my medical business platform to marry business skills development, employee development, and personal growth interests, which led me to develop a type of learning organization. It not only expanded my vision, it had a profound effect on employee behavior, customer service, culture, and financial outcomes. From my life experience and training, I've been able to also marry neuroscience with my personal development expertise. My life purpose has always been, and still is, to restore vision. So now let's look at this subject of leadership beyond gender. Now, many of you in the audience have probably come across articles or conversations that compare male leadership, I quote, to, quote, female leadership styles, as if leadership has a gender. So there's this question about who makes better leaders, men or women? So I would ask the question, does leadership really have a gender? I believe the answer is no, it does not. Now, I'm suggesting that we ask a new question, and it would be this. Can men and women retrain their brains to become more effective and engaging leaders, regardless of gender? From my experience, the answer is a resounding yes. You see, when I wrote my book, Leadership Beyond Gender, Transcend Limiting Mindsets to Become a More Engaging Leader, I used leadership and gender as a context for illustrating how our mindsets can become stuck on beliefs and perceptions that may actually conflict with our experiences. If we are not aware of this, we can hold on to outdated social norms that no longer serve us and ignore information right before our eyes. This can limit us from performing at our best. This fixed mindset behavior could be applied to any area of business and life. These are types of blind spots. This is really beyond the leadership and gender argument. So what I'm talking about is not just relative to the leadership and gender argument. The lack of brain awareness hinders not only leadership skill, but also an application of a variety of skills. Neither all men nor all women think, feel, or behave the same within their respective gender groups. When we peg people by gender group like this, we create blind spots, ignoring the conflicting information when it does not align with our current mental models of the world. This can not only limit the potential of those we lead, but it also limits the potential of the leader, him or herself. For example, if we believe that men are not empathetic, we will stereotype males. Now, a man who believes he isn't supposed to be empathetic because he is a man will be more likely to either act inconsistent with his authentic nature or feel embarrassed about showing empathy in public. This can limit leadership development and his willingness to evolve this capability, and it is particularly counterproductive in today's complex and rapidly changing workplace. So more and more, empathy is being considered a high priority leadership trait, and it is able to be developed. Now, this I know from direct personal experience also. Now, likewise, women who think that they should not be direct in their communication with others will likely not be able to share feedback openly and honestly. They may not hold their boundaries clear enough to assert themselves when it is certainly appropriate. So in summary, there is a connection between how we think we should be and the brain's creation of self-fulfilling prophecy and autobiographical memory, the story of who you think you are. So I want to add that autobiographical memory is a scientific term from neuroscience. I want to also quickly define gender and to differentiate it from biological sex. Gender is a social construct, the sum of all attributes typically associated with each sex in a cultural context. Gender crosses biological lines. It is not fixed, but instead follows a spectrum of behavior traits. It changes with cultural norms. For example, I myself, being a physician, I can say that people used to think when I started out, and some still do, that doctors are male. Now, I lived through this shift in gender roles. Biological sex, of course, is truly genetic, and obviously there are differences between men and women's anatomy. So why is this important? Sex is hardwired. Gender behavior is not. The good news is that it's not too late to change our brain. Neuroplasticity reveals that our brain can change itself based upon our thoughts, feelings, environment, and experiences. So about 4 years ago, 2010 or so, I coined a word for this that is easier to recognize. I call it neuro reinvention. So I use neuro reinvention in lieu of neuroplasticity. And I call my process for rewiring our brain the art and science of neuro reinvention. So as the author, George Eliot, is to have said, there's a lot of truth to this. It is never too late to be what you might have been. Now, the interesting fact about George Eliot is that this was a pen name for Mary Ann Evans, who lived in the Victoria era in London. She said that she had to use a man's name in order to not be pushed into the romance novelist group because she was a woman. She said she would not have been able to find a publisher for her authentic voice and work if she didn't use a man's name. So this is a powerful example of how culture can create a story about gender roles and expectation and then assume these behaviors are genetically based when they are not. Because I've heard arguments that women have this natural proclivity for writing romance novels, and that's why there were so many romance novelists who were female, where Mary Ann Evans gives a different version. So very often these ideals are culturally based. This is critical to note if you are, as an individual, desiring to be your authentic, happy self and reach more of your true potential. So now with this in mind, let's look at what is at the root of ineffective leadership and team development. For every 1,000 hacking at the branches of evil, there is one striking at the root. Henry David Thoreau. Now I consider myself a root striker. So here we have an example. Now, growing an unhealthy organization. It says, Einstein said, we can't solve problems using the same kind of thinking we used to create them. So here's what we do now. Here's what we tend to do. We start out with a lot of blind spots at the root of our plans and our organizations. We don't know what we don't know. Historically, and we still do this in general, we ignore the functional qualities that we could develop in the right brain. We have an unclear why, we have clarity of vision, we're pretty myopic. And then what we do is we have an ideal and we start taking massive action, jumping straight into the left brain attention of skill sets, sales, marketing strategy. And then we pick our metrics based on this. So we are missing pieces of information. A whole half of the piece of the puzzle is missing. And then we wonder why we have unsatisfactory organizational performance. Excuse me, here's what I propose here. So just as Henry David Thoreau said, we need to strike at the root. And what's at the root? Self-awareness. In order to change the way we're doing things, in order to change ineffective behavior in organizations, we have to strike and start at the root. That's brain awareness. That will bring an awareness of how to optimally operate, I like to say, our amazing brain. And we start to actually pay attention to what's important in this right brain context, that intention, personal development, passion, purpose, clarity. And out of that, we will be more effective at our skill sets. We may even develop new ideas for marketing, sales strategy, and have different communication styles when we come from this other place. So this is a whole brain collaborative integrative process. And out of that, we create our metrics, and it will be a new type of environment, a new type of process. And you're, like I did in my own medical practice, more likely to have improved organizational performance. So again, what is at the root of developing and accelerating effective leadership? It's self-awareness. Now, the issue is we don't know what we don't know. When we are not self-aware, our brain and our body's cellular memory turns us into robots, metaphorically speaking, okay? Realize that 95% of what is running your day-to-day life is out of your awareness. Like in the slide, it's under the surface. You don't even see it there. Your conscious mind is like this tip of the iceberg because it cannot handle very much information at one time. Now, hence, you will rely on that subconscious, that unconscious, default to past perceptions, beliefs, and mental models that are under the surface that you're not aware of, that's running your life. People will hit your buttons, and without self-awareness or having consciously evolved old patterns, you will automatically see the world through the same old lens. Hence, you will behave in the same old ways and see people through the same old filter, whether it is accurate to the current situation before you or not. So this cellular memory will lead to self-fulfilling prophecy because your brain is searching for patterns in your environment that match with your existing paradigm to make you right. You will likely ignore current proof that conflicts with your existing mental models if you are not self-aware. So I have a slide here, the 3 levels of brain evolution. I call it level 1, level 2, and level 3. So raising self-awareness requires a willingness to learn how to escape from what I call level 1, level 2 brain, which is, as you see from this slide, the reptilian and mammalian brain, respectively. So this will require some effort on your part, just like learning to ride a bike or drive a car takes some practice. But it's a lot easier when you understand the art and science of neural reinvention. So as we learn how to quiet our mind, we can more readily access on demand our level 3 neocortex brain, particularly note this area, the prefrontal cortex. This has been called the seat of self-awareness, the prefrontal cortex. So from this place, we can choose our responses more readily. We can access higher levels of emotional intelligence and decision making, and even lower our stress levels. Stress can not only limit your performance, it is associated with as much as 95% of all disease. I can tell you that as a medical professional. Another word for stress would be overwhelm, by the way, because some people think that overwhelm and stress are 2 different things. They parallel. So what are some tips and strategies to begin to understand how to optimally operate your amazing brain so that you can start to perform at your very best? I will leave you with 2 today. Mindfulness meditation, and I'm going to put a different twist on that today, and understanding the importance of the role of focus, of attention in your brain's operating system. First, mindfulness meditation comes in many forms and practices. I won't have time to go into detail. I just want to leave you with this important concept regarding mindfulness and self-awareness. You can think of mindfulness as a key to unlock the gate to the level 3 brain, the seat of self-awareness area. Mindfulness helps you to slow down the busy mind chatter and busy beta brain waves associated with level 1 and level 2 brain. So once you slow down your brain waves, say to the alpha level, which is a slower, more self-aware state of mind in your daily life, you begin to be able to expand your self-awareness. You begin to realize that you are not your thoughts and feelings. Okay, you heard that right. You are not your thoughts and feelings. You begin to be present to what is in front of you instead of dwelling in the past and future mentally. You are able to bring your awareness into your body, which can help you to control your breathing and reduce your stress. Stress dulls our intelligences on many levels. Once you can access your level 3 brain, you can learn new skills and tactics to reprogram old patterns and behaviors that no longer serve you. You will be able to access and change old perceptions that are keeping you stuck behaviorally. So think of mindfulness as a golden key to accelerating and accessing, I should say, the transformational tools, strategies, and tactics for behavior change. So mindfulness is just a tool to be able to start to access to get through the door. And then there are a set of tools and tactics within that context of transformational change. So it's not just the old tools and business as usual stuff. Okay, so now let's look at this second tool, the power of focus, the second tip. The second tip is to recognize that your brain works via focus of attention. This is fundamental to the operating system of your brain, so to speak. So your brain is like a quantum computer, very complex, And the truth is, there is still much to be understood about our brain. We don't know everything about it. What we do know is that what you put your attention on is sending a type of command to the brain that says, I want that. Listen, everyone, this is very important. What you focus on expands, whether you really wanted it or not. This is why you do not want to put your attention too much on negativity or what you think you cannot do. Often we limit ourselves just by focusing our attention on the wrong thoughts and feelings. What you give your attention to is feeding your mind, your nervous system, your future choices. So be aware of what you focus on. I could say much more about the nuances of how to use focus of your attention, but due to our brief time today, I will leave it at this. And I will leave you with guard your focus of attention if you hope to perform at your very best. So remember, the key take home, mindset is at the root of ineffective leadership communication and team development. Be that one person in 1,000 and start striking at the root. And if you do, you can be a cultivator of a movement to grow healthy and high-performing organizations. For those of you who would like to learn more, I do have a book, Leadership Beyond Gender, Transcend Limiting Mindsets to Become a More Engaging Leader, available on Amazon.com. So now, that's the end of the first part of our presentation, and I will turn it over to Melissa, who will lead our Q&A segment.
Thank you so much, Valencia, for your presentation. I'm really excited for this Q&A portion. I have some questions here for you. I'm very curious, what contributed to your idea for this concept of leadership beyond gender?
Well, Melissa, early in my life, I was quite passive. Now, I decided in grade school that I wanted to be involved in leadership, so I did. And I developed through practice more assertiveness, and I enjoyed inspiring and engaging my peers. Yet in later life, in medical school, I became more of a command control personality. This didn't feel authentic to me, and it was creating havoc in my medical practice as I came out of school and started my office. It was creating havoc with the employees. So as I began to intentionally transform, and this was back in the 90s that I started this process and really brought it to my office intentionally in 2002. So as I began to intentionally transform, I came to realize that I could change. I didn't know that I was literally rewiring my brain. That came later with the advancement of neuroscience. So as I've kept abreast of business articles on leadership after selling my medical practice, I noticed a pattern of describing leadership traits as male leadership style and female leadership style. So my conclusion and experience is that there are, for example, males who are empathetic and women who are not, and vice versa. In fact, when it came to many of my own interactions at one time in my life, I, myself, was very unempathetic, and I'm a female. So likewise, there are women who are very strategic and linear in their thinking, and men who can be all over the place. So with the advent of neuroplasticity, combined with my own experience and from clients that I've worked with, I've witnessed dramatic behavior change capability when people are motivated and inspired to change and have practical knowledge, support, and skills training to do so. So this book is a combination of my personal leadership journey, current neuroscience theories, and practical tools and strategies to make positive personal transformation a reality for you.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Valencia. Now, why do you think that change is so hard for most people to make?
Well, there are a few reasons, such as we've trained our brain, our perception, with too much fear. We have fear to the unknown in extreme measure. That's one reason. So that's something we can rewire. And I do understand how that affects people. We are also educated with a focus on linear thinking and needing to be right, the right answer, predictable, standardized answers. This is just not real life. So we have this expectation to need to be right and to be linear in our thinking, and we have to learn how to become comfortable with not knowing the answer initially. We have to become comfortable with ambiguity. And then another reason, We think too literally and piecemeal. We often ignore the context, and we expect to be able to fit our tools into every situation, like in marching order, like in a linear line, and life is not a straight line. So change requires us to change our behavior. We've associated this need to change our behavior with fixing ourselves, which is another trigger for self-defensiveness and, quite frankly, shame. And it's really inaccurate. We're not fixing ourselves. It's really about learning and growth.
Wow, that is a really fantastic paradigm. Now, can you say a little bit more about this idea of fixing ourselves and behavior change?
Sure. So let's do a little exercise. So everyone on this webinar listening to this, now or later, imagine you're at a professional development session at the office, and you have 100 people in the room, and your peers are there, maybe even the CEO is there, and I'm there, and I'm the facilitator. And if I ask this question, by a show of hands, how many people here need to fix themselves so they can become a more engaging leader, a better leader? So just feel that, think about that. Now, even if the words aren't said like that, but it's implied that this is a fix yourself kind of question. Okay, you're going to tend to want to jump in and raise your hand. Okay, right. Now try this same scenario, exact same scenario. You're in the same room. What if I said, by a show of hands, how many people know that they need to learn and grow to reach more of their true leadership potential? Now, I would suggest that if you don't raise your hand on that question, you may be suspect for being a good fit in the future and starting now, because we're in a workplace where we need continuous growth and learning. And it doesn't matter how smart you are, or how many degrees you have, or what school you went to, the environment changes. So there's something always to learn and be able to have mental agility and adapt. You have to be willing to learn and grow to reach more of your true potential. So part of the problem with behavior change right now is that we've trained our brain to have this paradigm, like the self-help book store, right, and all of this, that we're fixing ourselves when in truth we're just learning and growing to reach our true potential.
Wow, that's very fascinating. Now, okay, how did you shift your mind? And are you saying that you also once believed that you were fixing yourself at one point?
Yes. So like self-help is a term most people think of when it comes to personal development, and this carries a negative connotation. It was a process over time that helped me. At first, it was just courage, quite frankly, because believe me, it felt scary, because I started this consciously in the 1990s. I didn't have a whole lot of support, if you can imagine. So it was more of an internal growth thing, an internal intuitive spiritual process and reading. So we tend to avoid being honest with ourselves anyway, because it feels threatening to our very identity. And then later, as I saw great results happening in my life, I pushed through much quicker, and it became quicker and quicker. And then I stumbled upon the fact, and this was over a decade ago, that I was not my self-talk. So I used to have this 24/7 self-talk, it seemed. For me, this was a major life-changing revelation that I was not my self-talk. I was not my thoughts. And it was not just a mental ideal. I really felt this in my bones. So I was becoming more self-aware. And I do want to note that I started meditating around 1999 or 2000, before all this happened. They were laughing at it in neuroscience at the time, but I really needed to do that. And it obviously paid off for me to have the courage to do it. And then gradually I began to experience the reality of this ideal that my being was not the same as my thought, feelings, or even behavior. So note this. What I did was not who I am. What I do reflects my present level of character development, but we can evolve our character, which gives rise to our behavior. So by separating my identity from thoughts, feelings, and behavior, I was better able to stand apart and observe these areas more objectively. This led to my new belief that life is a growth process. Life is a flower in a garden. We grow, we evolve. We don't just sprout up in one full cycle, okay? This is a basis for my love of learning and focus on lifelong learning. It's more enjoyable now and adventurous instead of shame-producing for me, and neuroscience has really helped me to grasp and ground in more of a scientific, objective way the things that I did for myself before there was neuroscience. So it gives me a language to speak through, and I have the actual experience. So for me, it's not just theory. So is this challenging at times? Yeah, you better believe it is. But the more you grasp the understanding of the brain, it really builds mind muscle and resilience, and you can turn off that fight, flight, freeze response of your amygdala on demand.
Wow. So let's go back to this idea just for a moment. What do you mean by you are not your thoughts? Can you just tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So thoughts, feelings, literally from a scientific perspective, I would say thoughts and feelings are electromagnetic energy. That's what it is. Your brain is constantly, excuse me, I'm just going to take a little sip. Your brain is constantly involved in neurochemical processes. And so what thoughts and feelings you choose is going to be based upon your perception. And perception and emotion are linked. And I do separate emotion from my definition of feeling. From my definition, emotion is either love or fear, so to speak. It's a category of love or fear, and then each one of those categories has a set of feelings with it. So if you are seeing something that you like and you want, and you move toward it, then you're going to have joy and peace and higher vibrating type of happiness feelings. Whereas if you're afraid of something, it's worry, anxiety, is going to move you away. But these are subjective assignments. So know that it's subjective. What you determine as what your perception is, how you look at something is subjective. And now, out of all of these experiences, thoughts and feelings, you start to form your autobiographical memory, as I mentioned earlier, which is really a story of who you think you are. It's a narrative about who you think you are. And this is neuroscientific fact, how we how we describe ourselves and think of ourselves. Then it gets stored into our cellular memory, and it goes under the water, like in the iceberg. So we filter our experiences through who we think we are. This is why gender stereotyping can hinder leadership development. Our brain will be following its programming. In particular, if our security is attached to our behavior, we will actually resist growth if we think it will lead to outcomes that threaten our social security. So this level of level 1, level 2 brain evolution that corresponds to this social brain. For example, Keegan and Leahy of Harvard in their immunity to change work, they call this level of thinking I described, where you are overly concerned about the socialization and what people are thinking about you and taking in what they say about you, etc. They call it the socialized mind, and that does correlate with level 1, level 2 brain, and this is where the majority of people still live. When we stop being subjected to our thoughts, meaning when I said I used to have negative self-talk and I thought that was me and it was true, I was subject to my thoughts. But once I learned, this was over a decade ago, that I could actually stand apart, I began to see my thoughts as separate and apart from me. It became more objective. I could look at them objectively and know that that's not me, and I can self-manage from that space. So I stumbled into doing this over a decade ago, and it really accelerated my self-awareness, and it also has a lot of benefits in terms of other health aspects to mindfulness meditation as well.
It's an incredibly powerful concept. Now, on the other hand, as we're growing and transforming, this could be kind of scary. What happens to us if we lose our current identity? This might really cause some confusion for people.
First, I'd say there's no one-size-fits-all approach, Melissa. People have to decide for themselves where they are and how far they want to go. Motivation matters. Secondly, it really helps to have someone who has done this, who has actually experienced this type of transformational mindset to guide the way. Now, even though much of my early transformation was through trial, error, and intuition, because there was no neuroscience available, my ability to grasp the concepts from neuroscience and integrate them into personal development tools and strategies that I had either gained by insight or by study helped me to really truly reprogram my perception of how I viewed self-image, formation, and it makes me more able to translate that to other people because it's through experience and it's combining science. So as I made time to reflect on my own values, purpose, mission, and dreams, I began to reconnect with my core, my heart. I would also call this my spirit. Mm-hmm. I believe our spirit is the anchor of our stability. So that gives me this stable sense of identity. And this is my being, my connection to life, the divine, or whatever you wish to call it. I firmly believe that this is a personal context, and I don't tell people what kind of language they should use here. You have to do what works best for you. But by coming from this inner authentic self, the things that I do, remember I said that who you are is not what you do, or your behavior is not what you do. I mean, your identity is not what you do. Your behavior is what you do. But your identity is not associated per se with what you do. We do tend to do that, but I'm saying it really is not who you are. What you do is not really who you are. Mm-hmm. So when we have a logical neuroscience understanding of how our brain creates meaning and stories, then we can combine that with new practices to accelerate self-awareness. From this place, we can then realize our power to purposefully create our sense of identity. So here's the thing, whether you realize it or not, you've been doing this all along. We've been doing this all along. So who do you think you are has evolved over time, because it's not objective. It's maybe that third grade teacher said something that you believed how you were, and now it's still playing out in your life, but it's a story that you can evolve to a higher level. And because you see, our identity has historically been based upon our old childhood stories or experiences, what other people told us who we were, and we just accepted it as true. So it really wasn't so much as the core of us, it really wasn't so much as our authentic heart, or like Mary Ann Evans in the Victoria era, instead of being told that who she was to write romance novels, she was able to find a way to express her authentic self and her identity the way she saw herself, not the way she was told she was. So I realized a while back now that I don't have to accept what others say about who I am. They can believe what they want to believe. That's fine. That's just their story. But this is why you need to know who you are and how you want to define yourself.
Wow, that is incredibly empowering. I think we have time for just a couple more questions, Valencia. This is just so amazing. So,
well, really, I do want to let you know that at the time, I know we're getting near the end, so whenever you're ready to stop, just
okay, sure thing, Valencia. Let's pause on. We'll just do one more question here. I think that's what we have time for. Now, what you're saying is that really whatever you say about yourself, you can do. So we can just decide really to become a different personality and perform differently and make this change?
Well, no, not quite. I'm not quite saying this. So let's look at this holistically and systematically. I believe we all have a purpose and we all have personal preferences. So there are a couple of critical points, though, that I want to make regarding this. So first of all, you need to get quiet and reflect on what you really want. You will have to learn how to separate what you really want from what you believe you should want. So what is your purpose and predispositions? You see, not everyone really truly wants to be a physician, CEO, or actress, okay? So you will have to eliminate blind spots. This is another thing that say, because you are a man or a woman, that you should behave a certain way, or that you can't have what you want based upon beliefs of what others have said about you. So in other words, you have to first determine if this future self you is in alignment with your authentic heart or spirit. Also, you really need to feel and believe you can have it. Mental assent is not the same as belief. Belief feels it, knows it. And then there is, discipline, training, desire, passion. So there are factors that affect how you will show up. So I don't want to simplify this ideal of transformation. I just want to open the conversation to begin to recognize that we have more ability to change our behaviors and ourselves than we have thought in the past, that we have more tools at our disposal if we are willing to change. And I think that our complex and rapidly changing world is requiring us to re-examine our limited views that we have of our abilities and who we think we are. Until we change many of these limitations, we will not be able to create the organizations and environments that are actually possible. Because after all, impossible is where your imagination ends.
Valencia, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and transfer back over to my screen, and then we'll go ahead and finish out the session. Thank you so much, everyone, for sticking with us.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Valencia, thank you so much for that presentation and conversation. Just absolutely fascinating. So again, here is Valencia's contact information if you'd like to get in touch with her website, valenciaray.com. And please, of course, check out her book. Now, just a few reminders before we close out today. For those who joined us later in the session, do feel free to visit our blog, the Less is More blog on our website. Please do join our Accomplishing More with Less groups on Facebook and LinkedIn, and you can follow our founder, Pierre Khawand, on Twitter. A few classes coming up soon in May here. We have Google Analytics on May 6th, Total Organization, Advanced Excel Pivot Tables, Move More to Accomplish More, and Project Management, a 2-part session in about mid-May. So check those out on our website as well, people-onthego.com/webinars. And one more reminder, when you exit the session today, please do look out for an email. We're going to send you the recording of this session for you to view, and please do fill out a feedback form. We really do appreciate your feedback so we can continue to improve our offerings to fit your needs. One more time, Valencia, thank you so very much for joining us today, and thank you everyone for your time. I look forward to having you at a future webinar. Have a great day.